Shabbat shalom, everyone. I'm gonna encourage people to take seats. Anywhere is fine. You can sit anywhere you like. As it's so nice to have some people in person again. We're going to begin with Hine Matov, how good and how pleasant it is that we dwell together on the top of 128. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. We're just going to make our way down the page. Maya fe hayom. Maya fe hayom. Shabbat shalom. Maya fe hayom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Maya fe hayom. Shabbat shalom. Maya fe hayom. Shabbat shalom. Yedi nefesh v'rachaman. Yedi nefesh v'rachaman. Mishachadecha. El retzonecha, El retzonecha, Yalalalai, El retzonecha, Yarutz avdecha, Kemo aya, Yishtacha veyalala, La 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 la, El Muhadracha. We're going to join together and turning back to page 120 as we prepare for candle lighting. The source of light and truth, eternal creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, instilling in us the holiness of mitzvot by commanding us to kindle the lights of Shabbat. And together we say, Amen. We continue together on the top of 132. Sing to Adonai a new song. Sing to Adonai all the earth. Sing to Adonai, bless God's name, proclaim God's victory day after day. Tell of God's glory among the nations, God's wondrous deeds among all peoples. For Adonai is great and much acclaimed. God is held in awe by all divine beings. All the gods of the peoples are mere idols, but Adonai made the heavens. Glory and majesty are before God. Strength and splendor are in God's temple. Together, let the heavens rejoice and the earth exalt. Let the sea and all within it thunder, the fields and everything in them exalt. Then shall all the trees of the forest shout for joy at the presence of Adonai, for God is coming. For God is coming to rule the earth. God will rule the world justly and its peoples in faithfulness. We continue in song with Bachadodi 138 and 139. So we welcome the Sabbath bride. Verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. Lecha, lecha, dodi, likrat, likrat, kala, pene, pene, Shabbat, nekabela. Lecha, lecha, dodi, likrat, likrat, kala, pene, pene, Shabbat, nekabela. Shemor v'zachor beri borechad. Hishmianu el haminu chad Adonai echad u'shemo echad. L'shem ol tiferet kaliti la 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 lechadodi. Likrat kala. Pene pene Shabbat nekavela. Lechadodi. Likrat kala. Pene pene Shabbat nekavela. Likrat Shabbat lechuvanecha, ki himekor habaracha, mirosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'ma Shabbat la 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 lechadodi, likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lechadodi, likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, kiva ore, kumi uri, shir daberi. Kavod Adonai like nigla la 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 lechadodi, likrat kala. Pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala. Pene Shabbat nekabela. You rise in body or spirit as we face the entrance. Verse 9. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'betzola. Toch emunei am segula, boi chala. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. You may be seated. We continue with Psalm 92 and 140, Mizmor Shir, our psalm for Shabbat. Mizmor Shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot laAdonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, Lehagid baboker chastecha, ve'emunatcha baledo, ale yasur ve'ale Rayon bechinor, Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, Tov lehodot laAdonai, Ulezamer leshimcha elyon, Ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Hisamachtani Adonai b'fo'olecha, B'ma'aseh yadecha aranei, Ma gadlu ma'asecha Adonai, Me'od amku machshevotecha, Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, Tov lehodot laAdonai, Ulezamer leshimcha elyon, Ulezamer leshimcha elyon. So we turn to 142 for Shalom Aleichem, our song welcoming our Shabbat angels. The Talmud tells, I think it's more story, tells us that every Shabbat, as you walk home, old days, as you go home from synagogue, that you have two angels following you, a good angel and a bad angel. And the good angel is hoping that when you get home, everything's ready for Shabbat, right? You're ready to sit down. And the bad angel is hoping that things are not ready for Shabbat. And if everything's ready, then the bad angel has to say, may it always be so. And the good angel gets to say, amen. And if it's not ready, then the bad angel has to say, may it always be so. The good angel has to say, it may always be so. The idea being, right, that it's not just us celebrating, right? It's all of creation celebrating. You know, the good and the bad, right? It's the simplified language. Right? We want to be prepared, but there's always a new week. Right? There's always another time to get something right. We join together in Shalom Aleichem, 142. Shalom Aleichem, Malechei HaSharet, Malechei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malechei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malechei HaShalom, Malechei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malechei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Barchuni L'Shalom, Malechei HaShalom, Malechei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malechei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem L'Shalom, Malechei HaShalom, Malechei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malechei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tonight, we're going to hear voices, statements from a number of different individuals about their experience of being both Jewish and an individual with a disability in recognition of February as Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month. As we listen, I hope each one of us will find a way in which we can act to help make our congregation and our larger community more welcoming to all people. For each one of us is made B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. The first person whose words I wish to share is Judith Heumann, who helped lead a number of protests, who was the first disabled person to become a teacher in the state of New York, and who worked in both the Clinton and Obama administrations. A child of German Jewish immigrants, she contracted polio at 18 months old, which caused her to need to use a wheelchair for her entire life. In her TED Talk from 2016, she shared the following. In 1972, President Nixon vetoed the Rehabilitation Act. We protested, he signed it. Then the regulations that needed to be promulgated to implement that law had not, in fact, been signed. We demonstrated, they were signed. And when the Americans with Disability Act, the ADA, our Emancipation Proclamation Act, looked as though it might not, in fact, be passed in the House or the Senate, disabled people from all across the United States came together and they crawled up the Capitol steps. That was an amazing day. And the House and Senate passed the ADA. And then President Bush signed the ADA. It's a great picture. President Bush signed the ADA on the lawn of the White House. It was an amazing day. There were about 2,000 people there. July 26, 1990. And one of the most famous statements he had in his speech was, "Let the shameful walls of exclusion finally come tumbling down." For any of you in the room who are 50 or older, or maybe even 40 or older, you remember a time when there were no ramps on the streets, when buses were not accessible, when trains were not accessible, where there were no wheelchair accessible bathrooms in shopping malls, where you certainly did not have a sign language interpreter or captioning or braille or other kinds of supports. These things have changed and they have helped inspire the world. And disabled people around the world want laws like we have, and they want those laws enforced. And so what we've seen is something called the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It was a treaty that was adopted in 2006. More than 165 countries have joined this treaty. It's the first international human rights treaty fully focused on disabled people. But I'm sad to say that our US Senate has failed to recommend to our president that we ratify the treaty. We signed it in 2009, but it doesn't come into force until ratification in the president. No president can ratify a treaty without the consent of the Senate. So we feel really strongly that our US Senate needs to do its job, that our Senate needs to enable us as Americans not only to be able to assist disabled people and governments around the world to learn about the good work that we've been doing, but it's equally important that disabled people have the same opportunities to travel, study, and work abroad as anyone else in our country. And as long as many countries don't have the same laws as we do and don't enforce them, if they do have them, opportunities for disabled people are more limited. While Human shared these words in 2016, it is now 2022, and the US Senate has still not ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We still have a lot of work to do. We're going to turn to page 144 in our prayer books as we join together in the Chatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah B'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei Becha yechonu v'yamechon U'chayedecho bet Yisrael Magala bagala U'bizman kari V'meru amen Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach Le'olam u'me'omaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach V'yitpar v'yishomam v'yitnaseh V'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal Shemei d'kodasham b'richu Leila min kol birchata v'shirata Tush b'chata v'nechemata Damiran be'alma V'meru amen. Rise in body or spirit for the Baruch Hu. 146. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Do you understand? Yalla lai lai lai, 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 yalla lai lai lai. Baruch hu et Adonai, Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai, Hamevorach, Leolam vaed, Leolam vaed. Yalla lai lai lai, 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 yalla lai lai lai. Continue in the middle of 149 together. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv haravim. We read together in the middle of 150. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people, Israel. Atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Israel. We turn the page and join together in Shema, watchword of our faith. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. You may be seated. We continue together with V'ahavta on 154. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shochcha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, v'hiot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Adonai Elohechem Emet. The following is from my colleague, Rabbi Rudy Reagan, who is a disability advocate and the first openly autistic person to be ordained by the Jewish Theological Seminary. She writes, I think that in some ways inclusion is the wrong framing because Jews with disabilities have always been a part of the Jewish people. The problem is that our communities have not acted accordingly. For instance, synagogue sanctuaries have been built with the assumption that everyone who belongs on the bima can walk and stand. The planned stage for the 2017 Jewish Theological Seminary ordination investiture ceremony was not wheelchair accessible. Out of respect for our colleagues and future colleagues, we insisted that a ramp be provided. A space built exclusively for walking people is not an appropriate sacred space for ordination. In addition to architectural considerations, we need to build accessibility and equal kavod, equal honor into everything we do. As I've previously written, we need new approaches to teaching that make room for difference, such as developing methods for group discussions that work when some participants have communication disabilities. More broadly speaking, we need to approach disability not as a form of charity to the less fortunate, but as a Jewish justice issue. We have excluded people for centuries, and it has left us without expertise and infrastructure. This is not a problem we can solve simply by adopting a better attitude. We need to devote considerable resources to catching up. Working for equality is a long-term effort. Luckily, we're Jews, and Jewish culture has a lot of wisdom about doing hard things. As it says in the Mishnah, it is not upon you to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. Continue together on 158 with our song of redemption, our song of liberation, Michamoka. Yai lai lai yai lai la 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 yai lai 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 ya la 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 yai lai lai yai lai la 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 yai lai 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 ya la 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 Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai Micha mocha nedar b'kodesh Nora tehilot osef eleh Nora tehilot osef eleh Malchutecha ra'u banecha Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam Ze Eliyanu ve'amru Ze Eliyanu ve'amru Adonai Yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai Yimloch le'olam va'ed. Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. We continue together in prayer on the top of 161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. We continue with the words of Vishamru on 162. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Ariella Baker, an attorney, policy advisor, and communication specialist, shares. As an Orthodox convert with a disability and a dual Israeli-American citizen, I have a unique perspective on how the Jewish community deals with disability inclusion. The community is truly incomparable in terms of being supportive and caring. People with disabilities often struggle with medical issues, wheelchair breakdowns, etc., and the community is always there to help, bring meals or visit, as opposed to the typical response of, "You're in my prayers." However, where I've experienced difficulty in being accepted by the community is in the context of love and marriage. The Jewish community tends to view disability as a defect when approaching matchmaking. As a result, despite being a young, intelligent, highly educated attorney, I have been set up with a grandfather of 6, a convicted pedophile, and a fugitive from justice, the perpetually unemployed, or most common, others with disabilities with whom I have nothing in common other than a disability. Often this mind frame comes with the intention of ensuring genetically pure non-disabled children. Obviously, no one wishes to have a child with disabilities, but breaking off a relationship or refusing to date someone because of perceptions of issues with a genetic line or disability sends an ableist message that people with disabilities are a burden to their loved ones. As we continue with the Amidah, with the central prayer of our worship, the Amidah is also known as the standing prayer. Even in the words that we choose and our decisions on how prayer should be conducted is often ableist in its messaging. I read an interesting piece actually from an Israeli politician who was arguing in favor of everyone in Israel having to be drafted into the IDF. And he was telling one of his colleagues who never fought that he never had to get dispensation in order to say the Amidah lying down while in a battlefield. And I just read it today, and it really shocked me, right? The approach that so much of our tradition is accepting and welcoming and caring, as some of the voices I've shared have said, and yet everything we do and everything we say typically comes from our lived experience. And it's why, quite a while ago, during the pandemic, while we were only online for so long, I switched saying, "We all rise," to "we rise in body or spirit," in an effort to acknowledge the fact that, hey, not everyone wants to rise. That's not how everyone, feels that they're being the most connected, which is where the rise is from, or respectful. Our prayer is based in king surf language in so many ways, but that we all connect in different ways. So as we turn to 164, sit or stand in your heart as you wish. We chant pages 164 through 170. Adonai, sifatai tiftachu fi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor B'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, Umevi Gula Lifnei Pneihem, Leman Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer Al Mashiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol atah Rav LaHoshia, Mashiv HaRuach, Umorid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noplim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Mishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umidomela, Melech Meimit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lechayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom ya'alu chasela. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. You may be seated. We continue together on the top of 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai v'kadesh haShabbat. Middle of 175. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'orecha levadcha b'yirah na'avot. Together on the top of 177, we pray, God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'cha na'eh v'hodot. We prayed together for peace on 178. Our prayer is Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha livarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvarich et amo Yisrael, b'shalom. Take a moment for a silent prayer. Words on 180 and 181 are the words of your hearts. Ose shalom bimroma, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru imru amen. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. We turn together to page 371. As our thoughts turn to those in our community, in our family, and in our hearts, or in need of healing, of body, of mind, or of spirit, or someone you're thinking of and you'd like to share their name, please feel free to put it in the chat, or please feel free to say it aloud. Steve Edwards, Linwood Jennings, Al Berman, Maurice Berman, Raji Grewal, Dennis Linderman, Jim Schicker, Hannah Winter, Sheila Flannery, Bob Dale, Barbara Gensler. We add to all those named, all those unnamed, suffering from COVID, suffering from illness, other kinds, from man-made and natural disasters, as we join together Misha Berach, middle of the page. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. The Torah has something to teach us every week. It's Ben Bagbag in the Talmud, one of our sages, who says, turn it and turn it, for everything is in it. Right? That every day, every week, every year, that there's something still to be learned, something still to be gleaned from our text. About a week ago, the 929 project got started over again. So for a very long time, people have been studying a page of Talmud, which is actually 2 pages back to back. And it takes 7 years to go through the whole Talmud, doing that every day. Well, a number of people decided, early 2000s, that we should do the same thing with Tanakh, with the Hebrew Bible. And they do a chapter from the beginning of Genesis all the way through to the end of Daniel at a time, which honestly, I think is easier than the Talmud for many people. And it reminds us that even when we look at a page and say, there's just nothing here, there's just nothing invigorating. I spoke about this a week or so ago, about the fact that the entire Torah portion is an architecture plan for the temple. Right? This thing should be this long, and this thing should be covered in gold, and this many different types of trees will be represented. For many of us, we don't get much spiritual fulfillment, perhaps, from architecture plans. But there's something to be gleaned even from those moments, and even from what appears to be very tiring repetition of law or of direction. Right? As we work our way through Exodus, as we work our way through the book of Shemot, we go from this census at the beginning to this miraculous, right? This miraculous story of our liberation. And then, interaction after interaction that our poor leader has to have with the people of, you're not doing enough. You're not giving us enough. We want more. We want different food. We want water in the middle of this desert. you're not good enough. And Moses has to learn ultimately from Yitro, from Jethro, his father-in-law, who was not an Israelite, that he can't take all the responsibility upon himself, that it is a community effort, that the whole people should be divided up into smaller groups, and issues should go to the head of that group. And if they can't deal with it, it works its way up the ladder. But that one person cannot be the mediator for every person amongst the 400,000 that are mentioned, right, who've left Egypt. That's unreasonable. And that is just the same as in any community of any size, including our congregation. Everyone has to do their little bit, right, in order for us to be successful as a larger community. Whether it's the group that is our green team, which is working on our environmental impact as a congregational community, or our social justice, our social action team that is working very hard to figure out how we can be literally more accessible in renovating or doing something with our bathroom situation, because our bathrooms are not wheelchair accessible, or any of the other number of things, including the education of all of our congregants. So, as Sage Ben Bagbag said, turn it and turn it, for everything is in it, if we only dig a little deeper. We're going to turn to page 586 as we prepare to conclude our service with Aleinu. We rise in body or spirit. Bottom of 586, followed by the top of 588. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tegdula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu k'uei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpechot adama, shelo samchokenu kahem, v'kor aleinu kechol hamonam. Ve'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Shehu nelt hashamayim ve'yosed haaretz u'moshev yikaro b'shamayim ima'al Ushchinatu zo, Megove meromim, Hu Eloheinu einod, Emet malkeinu efezulato, Kakatu v'torato, Yadata hayom v'hashevota elevavecha. Ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim ima'al, ve'aretz mitachat einod. Top of 591, we continue together. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand, but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. V'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo You may be seated. 595. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We especially remember the yard sites of Shirley Rosenberg Bach, Jean C. Berman, Helen Beale, Henny Brown, Marcia Kamer Hecht, Lorraine Dovitz, Joseph Shalom Ellen, Sarah Ernst, Frances Flannery, Ida Forsty, Sylvia Giedel, Mildred Jeanbach, Max Goldman, Leela Goss, Rose Harris, Myron Hauser, Loretta Kling, Louis Layson, Harry Lee Layson, William Leader, David S. Lowe, Frank Miller, Bradley Moyes, Barbara Cohen Nordwin, Walter Orwin, Edith Palmer Leader, Robert Persky, Leona Seguin Ralph, Ned H. Rubenstein, Michelle Arquishak, Edward R. Schwartz, Dorothy Balin Silverman, Lester Silverman, Harriet Sisman, David Steer, Tilly Wagenfeld, Terry A. Weiner, Shana Winter, Steve Weiner. Are there additions or corrections?
There are several.
We also add Uncle Lou and Barbara. You rise and body or spirit on page 598 for Kadisha Tomi at the Mourner's Cottage. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon uvyomechon, v'chayed chol beit Yisrael, b'gala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'omei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitralmam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dukudisha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. And the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, which we say, Amen. You may be seated. A few announcements. Tomorrow morning services are at 10 a.m. At 10 a.m. on Zoom and in person. Link went out in today's email at 11, followed by 11:30 by Torah study. Sunday school, 10 to 12 on Sunday at Congregation of Moses. It is our delayed, deconstructed Tu B'Shvat family program. And I'd like to note that the very long name was not my idea. But our deconstructed Tu B'Shvat Seder for families is Sunday. Anyone with kids in the community is welcome to join us. We begin at 10 and we will conclude by 12. My Hebrew class is at 2, back to in-person and on Zoom. And what's exciting is Thursday night at 7 o'clock on Zoom, or if you would like to watch the Zoom in person with other people, I will be here running the Zoom, but Rabbi Sally Priesand will be speaking to us. Rabbi Priesand was ordained in 1972. She was the first U.S. Ordained female rabbi. At the time of her ordination, she was believed to be the first female rabbi. But after the fall of the Berlin Wall, Rabbi Regina Jonas' papers from Germany, 1930s Germany, were discovered. So But we're very excited to have Rabbi Presand speak to us. She's going to speak for about 45 minutes, and there'll be about 15 minutes of questions. Everyone is invited virtually to join us. Our Zoom account can now hold up to 500 logins. So really, spread it. If anyone would like to join us, they're more than welcome. I'm very excited. And then services next week, again, at 7 in person on YouTube, 10 a.m. Zoom and in person. But it's very exciting. And as always, our weekly email is the best place to find everything else that is going on. We are going to turn and conclude together with Adon Olam on page 625. I hope you'll join me. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nibrach leit nasa v'hefzako azai melech shemo nikra Adon Olam v'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora Adon Olam v'hu haya v'hu hoveh V'hu yeh b'tifara Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nibrach leit nasa v'hefzako azai melech shemo nikra Adon Olam v'hu echad v'yein sheni laham shelo lehachbira Adon Olam Bali Reshit, Bali Tachlit, Below Hos Mahamisra Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nibrach Leit Nasa V'hefzako Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam V'hu Eli V'chai Goali B'tzur Chamli B'yitzara Adon Olam V'hu Nisi Omanosli Menat Kosi B'yom Ekra Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivrach Leit Nasa V'hefzako Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam V'yado Avkid Ruchi V'yetishan V'ya'ira Adon Olam V'im Ruchi Gaviyati Adonai V'lo Ira Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivrach Leit Nasa V'hefzako Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
It needed to happen. Yeah. I did get a full hour's sleep, but it was a surprise. Yeah, like wake up from the nap and suddenly you're like so tired. Wait, think you weren't worth it. Blowing up. It was raised in order to get it into. So I think, yes. It was a mistake, yeah.
Nice to meet you, Leslie. See you next week, Rabbi Sugar.
I will see you next week. I'm so happy. Possibly, maybe we can just.
Oh,
maybe we
just
can just like rotate it.
Possible.
I don't know.
Okay, so it looks like it might be like just.
I think it was relatively, yeah, like it's not. I don't think there's any like screws. I think it is sticky, whatever it's done. The complication was the cords and all finally managing to get the
Yeah.
thing stuck on the wall.
I recommended that cable to Dave. But it can be popped over. See, there's a seam here.
Wow.
And you can just pop over and take it out.
What?
Put a longer one or whatever.
Also that.
What's the?
Whatever it's stuck now.
Oh, like the whole thing was just like. Because he didn't want to use the stick.
And eventually.
Yeah.
It's gonna, the whole thing's gonna fall. So it is, it's not like they're like that for a year, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. I think we could just move it.
I think if it went up 2 feet, or we could just go a little the next city clerk. I think it's so good. Why do we have a camera in the sanctuary? No, unless we need to like be able to see what's going on. Really, it's most events like. Okay, it's not. Is your mic